Good evening, I'm Klaudia Czerwińska and you're watching World News Tonight live from Warsaw. More than 100 political prisoners were released from Belarusian prisons after talks held between U.S. Special Envoy John Coale and Alexander Lukashenko. Among them is Nobel Peace Prize winner Ales Bialiatski and other influential opposition figures. In return, the U.S. is lifting its sanctions on Belarusian potash. We'll bring you more on that in just a moment, but first, here's more of today's top stories. Russia pounds Ukrainian port city of Odesa as U.S. envoy Witkoff is on his way to meet Volodymyr Zelenskyy for peace talks in Berlin. And abuse in Hungary's orphanages and juvenile detention centers forces thousands to the streets of the Hungarian capital. And we begin with our top story today. 123 political prisoners are set to walk free as U.S. envoy John Coale concluded successful talks with Belarus's Alexander Lukashenko. This is the second time this year the Belarusian regime agreed to the U.S. administration's terms and released some of the key opposition figures who spent years in Belarusian captivity. Our correspondent Kazimierz Wysiak was at the Polish-Belarusian border and brings us this latest report.
I'm standing at a border crossing between Poland and Belarus, Russia's closest ally in Europe, and about 250 kilometers that way is Minsk, the Belarusian capital. It's there where a US delegation led by John Coale held negotiations with the regime of a self-proclaimed authoritarian leader of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko.
I think that President Lukashenko, who should get a tremendous amount of credit for this, I think that he is moving. He wants a more normalized relationship with the United States and the West. So we're moving in that direction.
The result of these negotiations is the release of some 123 political prisoners, among them Nobel Peace Prize winner Ales Bialiatski. He spent more than 4 years behind bars, and he and other prominent members of the Belarusian opposition have been deported to Lithuania.
This morning I was still in prison. I was there in completely different conditions on a bunk in a cell with almost 40 people, and now I'm free.
These members include also Viktor Babaryka, who ran for president in the 2020 rigged presidential election, as well as his head of political campaign, Maria Kolesnikova. The group of these 123 prisoners released by the Belarusian regime also include other nationals like citizens of the United States, the UK, Lithuania, Latvia, Japan, New Zealand, but also one citizen of Poland, Roman Gałuza. He was imprisoned in 2022 on the charges of treason. Now he is also on the way to Lithuania, as I've learned from the spokesperson of the Polish Foreign Ministry. The spokesperson told me that he is now a free man, so Roman Gałuza will choose what to do with his own life after he crosses the border with Lithuania. These political prisoners have been released under a deal where the United States lifted sanctions on the exports of potash. This release of these 123 political prisoners is definitely good news, but everyone here in Poland will be left disappointed by the fact that among them wasn't Andrzej Poczobut, one of the leading activists among the Polish community in Belarus, who has been imprisoned for more than 4 years. Unfortunately, he is not among those released in this latest deal. However, this is now good news for Ales Bialiatski, the Nobel Peace Prize winner, and other prominent Belarusian oppositionists who have been freed under this latest deal. And now to learn more about those released in this latest deal, here is this report by Randy Potts.
Among prisoners released today are Ales Bialiatski, Nobel Peace Prize winner and leader of the human rights watch organization Wiosna, Viktor Babaryka, Lukashenko's rival in the rigged 2020 presidential election, Maria Kolesnikova, Babaryka's campaign manager, opposition politician Maxim Znak, and Polish citizen Roman Gałuza. These are some of the 123 political prisoners released Saturday as part of a new deal with the United States, which includes lifting sanctions.
We lifted the sanctions on potash.
The lifting of sanctions on Belarusian potash is part of an ongoing thaw in relations between Belarus and the United States. Belarus is a major producer of potash, a key fertilizer component, and lifting the sanctions on the mineral is expected to boost the Belarusian economy.
They say Trump loves flattery, but I'm not doing it for the sake of flattery. I have to say that I really like his actions lately.
Today's announcement is just the latest deal the U.S. has struck with Belarus this year. The last time U.S. officials met with Lukashenko back in September, Washington announced an easing of some of the sanctions against Belarus, also as part of a prisoner release deal. More than 40 political prisoners had earlier been released by Minsk this year, including 2 Catholic priests, 31 Ukrainian citizens, and Serhiy Tsikhanouski, who opposed Lukashenko in the last presidential elections. This time, just as during the last release, most of the prisoners were immediately deported, some to Lithuania, others to Ukraine. According to Belarusian human rights organization Vyasna, approximately 1,200 people are still considered political prisoners of the Lukashenko regime.
I think about those who are still not free, and I'm very much looking forward to the moment when we will be able to embrace one another, when we will be able to see each other, when we will all be free.
While opposition leader Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya is grateful for the prisoner release, she says European sanctions must remain in place to tackle, quote, bigger issues.
European sanctions must be left for bigger issues, for irreversible and systematic changes in Belarus.
These new prisoner deals and relaxed sanctions come even as Belarus seems to be stepping up its confrontation with Europe, using balloons it flies over Lithuanian airports, migrant tunnels, and even harboring suspected saboteurs. There are also concerns that Belarus may soon host the Russian Oreshnik, a nuclear-capable missile.
Now Lukashenko is preparing the society to the war, militarizing society, militarizing kids in school, and there are a lot of war propaganda that we have to fight for our independence and so on. Lukashenko's press secretary announced that Lukashenko will tell when Oreshnik will be in Belarus in the next People's Annual Assembly.
For TVP World, Randy Potts.
And we will speak to Alina Koshik, editor-in-chief at Belsat, later in the show, so stay with us. And now we are moving to Ukraine, where another day brought another wave of attacks, this time on the port city of Odesa. While Russia ruthlessly pummels Ukraine, U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner are set to meet with senior European leaders and President Zelenskyy in Berlin over the weekend. Let's now go live to our correspondent in Kyiv, Ales Bialiatski, for a closer look at the latest developments. Good evening, Oz. Great to have you back. Tell me, Witkoff and Kushner will meet senior EU leaders and Zelenskyy in Berlin this weekend. What are the expectations on both sides? Are we closer to some sort of a breakthrough?
Good evening, Claudia. Well, it's unclear whether we are close to a breakthrough because obviously there is another partner in this, Russia, which is complicating matters because terms that may be acceptable to the Ukrainians will not be acceptable to the Russians and vice versa. We understand what the Americans want. The Americans want a swift resolution to this, even if that means Ukraine making painful compromises quickly without the will of its people in order to get this deal over the line. Now, President Zelenskyy released a statement on Saturday confirming that those talks are happening, confirming that he'll be meeting with Donald Trump's representatives. And as far as Kyiv is concerned, President Zelenskyy saying that their most important part is guarantees, first and foremost, that Russia will not return to Ukraine with a third invasion. So while Ukraine is negotiating the finer points of any potential deal, which may require some sort of compromise on territory that Russia illegally occupies currently following that full-scale invasion in February 2022. The question will be, first and foremost, from Kyiv's perspective, how can they prevent a third invasion if they are to strike some kind of compromise? And Kyiv sees the future of that question being some kind of watertight Article 5-like NATO security guarantee. The question is, do the Americans share that same view? If they don't, then we could be a lot further away from any kind of deal than certainly the White House is currently hoping for, Claudia.
And so peace negotiations revolving around the peace points continue, yet Russia keeps targeting civilian targets in Ukraine, as we see every day. This time, Odesa was badly hit. What's the latest on that front?
Another difficult day for the Ukrainians dealing with these attacks. 3 people killed, 35 injured in these attacks, with Russia launching 465 drones and nearly 30 missiles into Ukrainian territory. Odesa, as you said, that port city was targeted. But not only that, Odesa, Chernihiv, Kherson, Dnipropetrovsk, Kirovohrad and Mykolaiv, all of those cities had power outages following further Russian attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure. So this really is a campaign by Russia going on into the winter months, really punishing Ukraine's energy sector. And the people that are suffering the most of that are regular civilians, not just people living in frontline towns in Donetsk and Kharkiv, but people much further away in the center of Ukraine who are having their lives interrupted by daily power cuts because Russia keeps bombarding the energy infrastructure here. So that's going to be another point that the Ukrainians are key to stress through these negotiations, is that Russia continues to target civilians and civilian infrastructure while these talks are ongoing, Claudia.
Thank you so much, Oz. That was Oz Kataji reporting live from Kyiv. Stay safe. In Budapest, thousands joined a protest march calling on Viktor Orbán to resign for failing to prevent systemic abuse in Hungary's orphanages and juvenile detention centers. On December 9th, a video was released showing the acting director of one of such centers beating a child. The incident sparked public outrage, with opposition leader Péter Magyar condemning the act, which he described as an example of catastrophic treatment of children in state care. Our correspondent in Budapest, Andrew Sweeney, has more.
Today's march in Budapest is quite unusual compared to the other marches that have taken place in Hungary's capital. The mood here is solemn, sombre. No rallies, no slogans were shouted on the streets. Instead, people have lit candles and torches, carrying teddy bears and toys to signify the innocence of the children who have been abused in Hungary's childcare facilities. The opposition leader Péter Magyar, head of the TISA party, who all called for today's protest to take place, had this to say.
Thousands of children growing up without families are exposed to psychological and physical abuse. The government is fully aware of the more than 3,000 serious cases of child abuse and has failed to stand up for these unfortunate children.
The people who have attended today's protests in Budapest have come from across Hungary to register their concerns about the country's systemic child abuse. This is what they told me during the march.
This is pretty much a toy I got when I was a child, and I had a great childhood. And it just hurts me a lot to hear about how these children couldn't have that.
We are here for the children who are being molested in the children home care houses. These crimes are basically covered by the state.
I just want to save the kids. That's really important for me. I want to be a teacher when I grow up.
It's extremely ironic because our government is really proud that they are pro-family, pro-children, pro-motherhood. And then it turned out that in the last 4 years there have been over 3,000 abuse in the childcare system.
Péter Magyar has called on Viktor Orbán, Hungary's Prime Minister, to resign for what he says is the scandalous cover-up of failings and abuse in Hungary's child protection services. Some of the attendees today, has to be said, have said that they do not want to see this event, this march politicised. But in the run-up to the Hungarian parliamentary elections in April 2026, this event may well take on a political dimension of its own. For TVP World in Budapest, Andrew Sweeney.
And now time for Poland. The construction of the country's first nuclear power plant is slated to begin in 2028, but development is already underway. Warsaw's first attempt at nuclear power was in the 1980s. It was a failure due to financial and social burdens related to the catastrophe in Chernobyl. Now, with greater need for energy independence and security, immediate construction is necessary. TVP World's Maciej Wilowski went to the Polish coast to bring us this following report.
History has made a loop. Roughly 40 years ago, construction was well underway on what could have become Poland's first nuclear power plant. But a lack of funds and a public outcry against nuclear energy in the aftermath of the Chernobyl disaster of the 1980s put those plans on hold and abruptly halted construction of the facility located just behind me. Today, however, Poland is pursuing nuclear energy once again, this time in a quest for energy security and independence. And earlier this week, the European Commission approved state funding for the construction of a new facility located not far from here in the town of Chocewo along Poland's Baltic coastline. We asked local residents and authorities how they feel about the project and about nuclear power.
Generally, I think that investments in energy projects are highly necessary today because everything that's happening in the economy, in our homes, relies on energy. Considering this, I believe this was a good decision that we finally know where our country and especially our community stand.
Most of the residents we spoke to were equally optimistic.
I think it's the future. I think they should have started construction a long time ago. Now it's a little late in my opinion, and I might not be around to see it finished.
I'm positive about this. I hope it will bring only positive results, more jobs and, of course, cheaper energy.
While construction won't officially begin until 2028, development on site is already underway. And earlier this week, the European Commission greenlit over 14 billion euros of Polish state funding for the project.
It sounds technical, but in fact, construction will kick off with a bang, which will happen as early as December. We have secured the funds.
Poland's push for nuclear power could help strengthen the country's energy security while speeding up its transition away from coal. It could also provide cheap and affordable energy for millions of Polish households, especially those living near the coast. It isn't the country's first attempt at nuclear power. In the 1980s, under communism, construction was underway on a nuclear plant in Żarnowiec, but a lack of funds and protests against nuclear energy following the Chernobyl meltdown halted construction for good. Though it's been several decades in the making, Poland could soon have its first nuclear power plant. Maciej Wilowski for TVP World.
Warsaw is the 8th most traffic-jammed city in Europe, according to the Global Traffic Scoreboard. Although the report pins down the average time drivers spend in traffic, it doesn't necessarily fully reflect the locals' experience. TVP World ventured into Warsaw streets to find out what people have to say about commuting in the Polish capital.
Welcome to Warsaw, a city famous for its history, culture, and traffic. According to the latest Global Traffic Scoreboard, the Polish capital now ranks 8th among the most congested cities in Europe. In 2025, the average driver spent 64 hours stuck behind the wheel. But do these numbers reflect what the locals actually experience? TVP World hit the streets to find out.
8th place isn't the top of the chart, but many of these cities are not as big as Warsaw. For a country's capital, I consider it a very good result.
I mean, there's a great public transport system in the city here. Beautiful, modern, silent running trams and stuff. So encouraging people to use less cars would make the air fresher and people happier.
There are a lot of traffic jams in Warsaw. When we left today, we immediately got stuck in one, so it's quite a hassle. There are simply more cars on the roads now, as people are getting richer.
Residents also point to the growing popularity of bikes and the redesign of streets. And safety concerns are never far behind.
There are too many collisions with cars, and almost everyone who rides a bike has been in a collision with a car. It's not the driver's or the cyclist's fault, but rather the fault of the road design, as these paths are difficult to maneuver at intersections.
Others say the issue starts long before anyone hits the road.
The development of cities often leads to the creation of new housing without infrastructure in residential areas. As a result, residents who would like to use public transportation cannot do so because they do not have access to bus or tram networks. I think this is the biggest problem.
Yet there is optimism. Many see Warsaw's transport system heading in the right direction.
I believe that urban transport is growing, including buses and the underground. This is definitely developing in Poland and is very much needed. People will find it very useful.
So while Warsaw grapples with congestion, construction and frustration, residents agree on one thing: the city is changing fast, and the future of commuting may look very different from the present.
Now back to the topic of another success in U.S. talks with the Belarusian regime. 123 political prisoners were released by the Belarusian authorities after talks were held between U.S. envoy John Coale and Alexander Lukashenko. To discuss this important development, I'm joined by Alina Koshik, editor-in-chief of Belsat TV, an independent Belarusian media outlet operating in Poland. Good evening and thank you for joining me here on World News Tonight.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure as always. So, an important moment. 123 political prisoners were finally released. And this is the moment I can gladly say we've all been waiting for, also here on TVP World. How does it make you feel to know that these people are going to walk free?
It's always a happy moment when you see the information about the releasement of political prisoners, because please do remember that those people are not criminals. Those people are mostly normal people or activists or human rights fighters or journalists, so they don't have to be imprisoned at all. What should we say? That this is the biggest releasement of the last month, and John Coale, in his new position as a special envoy of United States to Belarus issues, as he said today, this is his mission, to release as many people as it's possible. Today I've been to Vilnius near the US Embassy, where we have been waiting for the buses with people, but unfortunately they only saw a couple of small cars, and just 8 persons came to Vilnius tonight. Among them are 7 citizens of different countries. Among them is Australia, or for example Lithuania, Latvia and Poland, and only one Belarusian citizen, but Ales Bialiatski, who is our Nobel Prize winner. We saw it, we talked a little bit, but this is what we had today in Vilnius. But the biggest surprise was made by Alexander Lukashenko, that the biggest portion, more than 100 people, were sent to Ukraine. And till that moment, we know that Ukrainian authorities and privately, General Budanov is in charge of them now, and we know that they are now in safety, but till that moment none of Belarusian representatives is near them.
I would also like to ask you, in the context of this today's release, why do you think Andrzej Poczobut was not among the people that were released by the Lukashenko regime?
We all have been waiting for a releasement of Andrzej Poczobut, as well as the releasement of my colleagues from Belsat who are still in prison and who are not on the list of those people who are free now. As for Andrzej Poczobut, I believe that he is one of the most cautious prisoners for Alexander Lukashenko. He knows that Andrzej Poczobut is a perfect person to put more pressure on Polish side, on Polish society, on Polish government, and that means also that the price he could receive for Andrzej Poczobut was not enough for them to release Andrzej. We also know that his health condition is quite poor at the moment, and we all keep fingers crossed for him to be released, and they know that Polish government did a lot fighting for Andrzej Poczobut, but not only. There were some rumors that Andrzej Poczobut was not on the list of Belarusian Democratic Forces, but Franek Pichorka recently told that no, Andrzej Poczobut was on the list together with other political prisoners. So this is just Alexander Lukashenko who is not willing to free Andrzej Poczobut. We also know that there are some rumors that they wanted Andrzej Poczobut to sign ask for bargaining him, but as far as I know, this can't be true at the moment. So what's left? I have been talking to representatives of Polish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and they said that we need to find another strategy to get Andrzej Poczobut out of Lukashenko's prison.
U.S. officials have told Reuters, this is something that we've learned from that engaging with Lukashenko and with his regime is a part of an effort to actually peel him away from Vladimir Putin, at least to a certain degree. Do you think that U.S. officials actually have the right to assume that Lukashenko could actually be swayed from under the influence of Vladimir Putin?
I think this is a part of big game. We all know how difficult geopolitical situation is at the moment in our region, and I believe that American diplomats are very realistic and they understand who is Lukashenko in the real game. And at the other hand, Lukashenko is one of the closest person and the closest closest person to Vladimir Putin at the moment. Belarus is supporting Russia in the war. So these small steps can show that Lukashenko has the other way. But please remember that this is a game which is made by Washington. We have completely different state of mind of Brussels and European countries. And we all know that the lifting of the sanctions on potash from the American side, yes, they're important, and for Lukashenko they were very important. But on the other hand, the biggest sanctions and most heavy sanctions are on European way. That's why, as representative of Democratic Forces said today, Franek Wieczorka, that yes, lifting American sanctions is for releasing people, but lifting of European sanctions is for changing situation in the country. So we all hope that someday it would happen. And of course, we all are worried because there is information, because despite of this latest releasement, still we have new political prisoners in the country. So this is unfortunately now just one-way ticket, and Lukashenko is playing his game. And what is important today, Lukashenko showed his power by sending these biggest parts, these very important figures of Belarusian Democratic Forces, as Maxim Znak, as Maria Kolesnikov, as Viktor Babarika, Pavel Severinets, to Ukraine. Nobody was waiting for them in the Ukraine, and thanks to Ukrainian side who has this possibility and capacity to take these people on board, but everything, you know, all the infrastructure were prepared here in Vilnius or even in Warsaw, but nobody expected it would be Ukraine. So Lukashenko wanted to, you know, make, to show that I'm playing here with the big cards and you will do what I want. So we'll see it, and we'll see what will be the next steps of American diplomats. We hope we'll have more information on how negotiations in Minsk went, maybe from Christopher Smith or from John Coale. But at the moment, this is a closed information.
Our time on the program is running out, but I wanted to ask you this final question. With what you said just now, with everything that happened with the negotiations between the U.S. and Belarus, what does this mean for Belarusian opposition and Belarusian democracy in weeks, months, and years to come?
We're all happy today because people are released, they are free, but this is just one small step, and we need to fight more. We need to fight and look for new strategies and new releasement. And actually, John Coale also said that we will have new releasement. Probably 100 people or even 1,000 people will be released, because we still have more than 1,000 people of political prisoners at the moment. So this is just a part of the game, and this is just one step, but still we are in the game, and these new big figures like Viktor Babarika and Maria Kolesnikova will definitely make stronger the Belarusian democratic forces.
Thank you so much, Arina. Arina Koshik, editor-in-chief of Belsat TV, an independent Belarusian media outlet, was my guest on the program. Thank you so much. And so this would be all for now here on World News Tonight. I'm Klaudia Czerwińska. Thank you very much for joining me, and I hope to see you back here on TVP World very soon.